Hi everybody, thank you for coming to my studio. I'm Renee Dowling and my art studio is called Reflections Art Studio and Community Classroom. It's an art retreat in the country just outside of Medicine Hat where I teach art techniques so that people can express themselves in a visual journal. My goal is to help people be creative, be happy, be healthy. Now, before we get to that visual journal flip through, I thought you might enjoy seeing some images from outside of my art studio window and see my art studio now. I'm all set up for Christmas. I thought you might enjoy it. And remember, if you like what you see, I would love it if you'd push that little thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. My goal is to help people learn art techniques so they can express themselves and be creative, be happy, be healthy. And some watercolor paper to create my journals. And I glued together 3 different signatures. And on the front, I used collage papers that I made by photocopying or scanning my journals and then photocopying out the prints. And I use them for collage papers. And this I make little face cards. And this one was using India ink and a little bit of water. And then I sewed around the outside with my sewing machine. And then once I knew where it was going, then I added colors to match the outside. Here is the back of it. All right, so I always cater my pages to the clients that come out. So if they have special requests, then we do that. I usually have a certain plan, but sometimes they want to do something a little different, so then I go with it. So the clients that came out on this day, they just wanted to play with watercolor, pretty much keep it simple. So we did some watercolor layers. There's a few stencils in the background. We also used some inks and tried to, while the ink was wet, take a skewer and carve into it. And I wasn't feeling very inspired, so I didn't know where this was going. So then I decided to go with the theme, I am grateful, and did some journaling vertically to add some vertical interest. Also, it makes it harder for other people to read in case it's private. And then for the longest time, it stood unfinished. And then I decided, oh, it needed a focal point besides the title. So I added another face card, rubber stamped the word grateful. And then just to kind of put on a finishing touch, did some faux stitching just with a marker. Also, here's a little rubber stamp that I made. So I included that as well. On this one, we started with journaling, just random words. And then what we did is we circled the words that we would like to save for the very last layer. And sometimes they get covered up through it with all of the layers, but these were the ones that I managed to save. And we did collaging on this one. There's maps, there's some musical pages, there's book pages. And on the book pages, I always like to read them and circle certain words that are relevant to the topic. So I decided the stencils that I used here looked like the water, and we went camping that weekend in September. So I decided to make this page about my vacation. And so focal point is me in my kayak, and then in the bubbles, I put different memories and things that we did that weekend. And then we also played lots of Catan, so I just glued a piece of paper to the back of the Catan game card and did some journaling. And there's some 50-50 tickets and washi tape around the outside. I also used a dictionary page, and it has the word camp defined. With this client, she wanted to create a watercolor or a journal for her grandchildren and wanted to put some advice. So I decided to go with that as well. So again, we started with things that we wished for our grandkids. And then we did some collaging, watercolor, painting over top, used some gesso. And then on the top, then brought back the things that we wrote on the original layer, maybe in more detail. And then put a title, and then I put the bird. A bird is usually a symbol of freedom and taking off and making dreams come true. On this one I did with younger students, after school class, and it was St. Patrick's Day. So we decided, or I asked them to think about what would make them a pot of gold to someone else. So they were supposed to list their attributes. I decided to just write sentences instead of just listing. And we just kept it really simple. We did some stenciling with watercolor paint. And then I also challenged them to create a paper doll using paper to represent themselves. Normally I go in order from front to back, but because lots of these pages were started when people were here and I didn't have time to finish while they were here, I've kind of gone a little bit out of order. So then we go to September, and the young students that were around age 7 to 10, they wanted to do some doodling, so I challenged them to draw or trace their hands, and then on the hands put doodles of things that they like to touch or feel. So I included the sunshine, water, sequins, plants, mountains, flowers. On here I used colors that the kids were using and not necessarily the ones that I would choose, just to try something new. There were parts that I didn't like, so I covered it up with black and then silver. I took it a little further and added some visual journaling, going vertical again, and then just went around the outside to kind of pull it all together with some ink, which is my new favorite thing, is to kind of go around the outside and put it edging. In August, July, we had a tornado. And so again, I wasn't sure where this page was going, but based on the hints that I got from the collaging, I got the words imagine. So I imagined what the tornado would look like if it was a creature. And then I have it, grabbing onto trees, an antique vehicle, houses. And then I drew myself here in the hallway, kind of hiding, asking for help. What was that unreal experience? And then I put this hand, sort of like helpful hand reaching out to help. And then I just wrote the words, I am alive, I have a home, I am blessed, I'm safe. Some of my neighbors were not so lucky. On this page, I did this one with teenager, and we did the usual collaging and watercolor paint in the background. And then we didn't have a specific theme in mind, so I have a box full of words that I've cut out. So we pulled out some random words and then tried to put them together into a theme. So my theme was relevant to the US decision to remove female rights. And this bothered me because I have granddaughters in the United States. So they all seem to mush together to explain my overwhelming concern about going back in time instead of moving forward. And I drew some symbols, painted some symbols that are relevant to the situation. On here, I did put tape around and then peeled it off when I was finished so that I'd have a white border. On this page on the left, also I did this with students ages 5 to 13 at a camp that I had in the summertime. And I gave them a recipe, and they have to have so many rectangles, so many triangles, so many squares curvy lines, straight lines, and then all the shapes had to intersect with each other and overlap, and then to make little sections. And then in the sections, I challenged them to use watercolor paint or some other water-soluble media. And we were trying to go from light to dark, and then also have complementary colors beside each other. So for those of you who don't know, complementary colors are colors that are opposite on the color wheel. And so you think of Christmas colors, green and red. Think of Easter colors, purple and yellow. And think of Edmonton Oiler colors, blue and orange. Now some of the students just stopped after adding the color, but others pushed on. So some of us added stencils for repeated patterns. And then some of us took it even further and did some journaling, or sometimes even putting favorite numbers. And again, we taped around the outside and created a white border. And it was white before I added other pages and my inks leaked. This page I created, well, it started off as just a demonstration page. So I was like doodling and showing kids different techniques. It was a big mess. So when I went camping with my husband, I said to him, let's just kind of play on this page. So he said, well, let's write with our left hands. So we wrote with our left hands. And then I asked him to do some drawing. So he drew, for some reason, butter and a steer and made a little comic and some dice because we played Yahtzee. And then it was up to me. Oh, and then he also drew this, one of these. So then it was up to me to figure out how to put it all together. So I decided to do this lady and then all these circles down the side, and then did some journaling. This one was also started as a demonstration page. I was showing the students if you applied rubbing alcohol, like flicked it onto your wet watercolor paint, it would leave an interesting texture, which you can't really see anymore because I've put so many layers over top of this. And so this page sat unfinished for a long time. And then I decided to add a few little people here that looked like they were dancing. And then I decided to do this lady who's thinking, I just want to dance with you, which is one of my favorite songs. And it's my ringtone for my husband. It's a George Strait song. And then I did some journaling here. And then I used some metallic paint. And then when I was finished, it looked a little dark to me. So I just flicked some white acrylic fluid paint, titanium white on it to brighten it up a little bit. This began like all the other pages with some collaging and paint and stenciling. And then I decided I wanted to celebrate a certain threshold that I had crossed with my business. And so I drew my studio and I showed that it's out in the country and we visit the horses and there's some little people visiting the horses. I'm going to show you a little bit closer. And then the numbers that I put here are certain secret numbers relevant to my business. And then I added some words with rubber stamps. It's led me through exploration. I have different opportunities. I have some freedom now, some joy. And then in the background, there are pages from Harry Potter book. And I found the words a day at home. So this is my day at home, but it's in my studio. That I'm free and then I feel better about the situation. I have joy. Did a little bit of journaling. And then again, I did this outside. And so outside it looked pretty bright, but when I brought it into the studio, it looked very dark. So then I went back and added some white highlights. And then just the other day, I decided it was still dark, so then I added some flicks of paint, some white paint. This page also began with some clients, and I've tried a different kind of border that I've never done before with just some vertical and horizontal intersecting lines. And again, this one sat unfinished for a long time. Then I started doodling and adding some gold washi tape. And I had these two people helping each other, but I didn't have a background or anything. So then I added these trees with lots of different whimsical markings, and then put down the quote, "Lean on me," and then just declared it finished. I'll just show you up close a little bit. This is one of my favorite pages in this journal. We just jumped right in with watercolor paint. There was no collaging at all. Used a little bit of gesso, some markers for some mark making, and it just turned out so dynamic, I guess. And I decided on the layers, it kind of looked like platforms, so I've put different types of people on them doing different poses. Did some more people down here. Again, did some journaling this way. This journaling is when you journal, you don't lift up your pen, and then all the words run together. So if you're trying to write some really personal things down, it makes it really hard to read. But it's important to be able to express yourself. And I find that I have to write words on all of my pages. And then this writing is upside down. And also this one is too, with continuous writing, and it just makes it harder to read. But I love this page as far as all the colors and the movement in it and the lines. And then these little marks here were not intended to be there, but they leaked through the holes, so I just left them. Here's another page of mine that's my favorite. I started this one with, when Teen was out for private lessons, and she wanted to put a border on, so I thought I would too. And we're using washi tape, and the washi tape stuck to the page, and so I just went with it, and I put the border inside instead of along the edge, and I actually really like the look. And then here again, we didn't do a lot of layers. We were just playing with watercolor paint, and used a little bit of pencil crayons and maybe like a white China marker, a little bit of washi tape. And then I got to realize that over the past 3 years, since my studio has been opened, that it doesn't matter what age people are, they all have the same concerns running through their minds. Will I be enough? Am I safe? Am I good enough? Am I strong enough? And then you get to the point where you say, I do have a voice, I trust myself, I got this, and then you're open to all kinds of opportunities and learning new things. I like this one. It says, you never know or when or where you will make connections with people who truly understand you and your story. We all go through times of self-doubt, comparison, and confusion, but we are all connected because we are human. Our stories differ, but our feelings are similar. And then I found this quote by William James. We are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface, but connected in the deep. And then, of course, I had to add people, which I'm hooked on doing now. Just kind of zoom in a little bit. There's lots of purple in here, and I don't normally use a lot of purple. So I always try to challenge myself to use new colors, and which is sort of breaking what a lot of people do. They do a theme and it's the same color scheme throughout, but I'm not like that. I kind of change through the seasons. I started this page also with some teens that were out here, and we did collaging, excuse me, and played with all kinds of things. There's gesso on here, but of course tried to do some mark making in the gesso. And this rabbit is a statue that I have in my studio, so I wanted to draw him. And at this time, the bees, giant bumblebees, were flying around. This was at the beginning of October, so I drew a plant. This is actually a picture of a painting of a picture that I took. And then here, I put the sun will come out tomorrow, and then it just happened to have in the gesso, I carved a swirl with some lines. So I thought, well, there's the sun. And then did some journaling in white pen. And white pen is kind of neat because you can still express yourself with words, but it integrates into the background and it's nearly impossible to read. So There was a reason why the sun will come out tomorrow, so I must have been feeling a certain way. Of course, by the time you're finished, you start with one feeling, and by the time you're done, the feeling is gone and it changes, and it's just like about enjoying the process of creating, and it's not about dwelling in your feelings of whatever you're going on at the time. And then these plants are some plants that were blooming as I was drawing this page. Adult clients were out this time, and they wanted to learn how to do some carrot people. So I did a whole page, and they did pages as well. And I had a whole bunch of people down here, decided that it was just too much, and I wanted to turn it into a little scene. Kind of remind me of like a scene in San Francisco at the Golden Gate Park. And so I painted over top, and then I added a little flap, and there's a picture of me, and I was trying to do some shading, and it didn't turn out so well. So my face is pink, and I have weird heart on my cheek, but that's okay. And then I found this quote from Green Gables. "Oh, I am grateful, but I'd be ever so gratefuler if," and then she put hers, but I put, "if the treasure is found." And then I put, "I have your back, here's hoping." And then I did the continuous journaling again without lifting my pen till I got to the end of the page, and therefore the writing is more private. This is another one of my favorite pages. It looks kind of dark on the screen, but it has lots of greens, and greens I don't normally put a lot in, but now I'm becoming a real big fan of it. The usual layers. One thing that stood out to me here was I circled little mistakes, and I had made a few mistakes this summer. And so then, and I've never been very good at acknowledging that I've made mistakes. I don't like to make mistakes. And so on here, I put the title Mistakes, and then I wrote, "I will make mistakes. I will take responsibility for them. I will do my best to learn from them. I will do a better job tomorrow. I will move on from them. I will forgive myself for making them. Love, Renee." And then I was on the typewriter typing about the mistakes, and I just let myself, I always make typing mistakes, so I just left them. And I just put "forever learning from my mistakes, Einar Gunnelwad," which was my name backwards. Put a little vellum picture of me here. And this is a photograph of a feather that I've collaged, or that I printed onto tissue paper and then collaged on. And I wanted to turn it into a little door, because when you admit your mistakes, you're opening the door to discussion, but also just you feel free so that you can go through the door. And then on this side, I put a couple quotes. "Listen to your heart. It will keep you out of tight spaces." I always find there's a mistake, "your" instead of "you." Ha ha ha. This page I did with a teenager, and she wanted to do a spooky scene because it was close to Halloween. So she did her version, and this is my version. And I used this fantastic gold paint for the leaves. And she wanted to do people as well. So she did like an adult holding hands with a little one, but I did a woman being accompanied by a ghost. And then in amongst the trees, I kept seeing people. So I added people. And then like there's a little skeleton that I saw, which is kind of haunting. And then on the other side, we used like inks and distress oxides. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to put on here. So I found some lyrics from a song called "The Ghost" by Navarro. And it's, "Are you afraid of the dark?" So this person's like going down in the forest in the dark. "Are you scared? I can see you from behind." There's a person from behind right here. "You can hear me in your mind." And then I also had like several other student or families and kids come out, and we did like watercolor wash in the background, and then sort of like silhouettes, and then had some of the background show through. So I had all these extra pages, so I decided to glue them in, and then I ended up with an extra page. So then I had an idea where I took some acetate from an old toy box, and I put some gesso behind it on the back and then wrote, "She searched far and wide, seeking her true love. After years of searching, she looked deep within and found herself." And then on here, did an illustration. And the inspiration for this was the Kelly Clarkson show, and they had Kelly Clarkson in this beautiful Halloween costume with a long dress and flowing robes, and she was singing the Monster Mash. So I decided to see if I could borrow some of the ideas for that for her costume. And so she's traveling across the ocean in this sort of dragon boat, and there she is. And then she went through the winter time, and there she is. And then across paths and in the summertime because the grass is green. And then she found true self-love. So that is represented by the heart. To attach the pages, I used washi tape. And I always put glue down and then put the washi tape. Even though the washi tape has glue on it, for me, I never find that it actually holds that long. And so this page is kind of neat because it can fold in this way or it can fold this way, which kind of leads to this page. And then here I just did, again, another simple silhouette and a tree. I love trees. The third eye here. And then nothing in life is more exciting and more rewarding than the sudden flash of insight that leaves you a changed person. And this was a fun page that I did with adults that were coming out each week. And on this one, we had some prompt cards. So every few minutes, we pulled a card, read the card out loud, and then we switched media or did whatever the card said. So we ended up using things like cheesecloth. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see better. So cheesecloth, and we used some inks to stain the cheesecloth. We used things like burlap. One of them was use musical notes, so there's some there. Use charcoal, so we did some charcoal marks. One was pick a random book page and circle words to create a poem. So there's my poem. One was to do a contour drawing. So I drew one of my antique keys that I have in the studio. And we used molding paste through stencils. One was to do some carving into wet paint. So I used a skewer for that. There's some pages from an old manual. One of them was glue down your collage paper, then tear pieces off of it. So that's what has left these white marks. It's kind of nice because then when you paint over it, the paint collects on the edge and then it darkens and adds more texture. And then when we were done, this page, I couldn't decide if it was finished or not. The challenging part was to try to make all the different components come together. And I had purple, and I thought, what? Just purple here and here and here. So I went with it and added a purple wash over top of everything, or some people call that a glaze. And then finally, just the other day, because we did this quite a few weeks ago, the other day I had a door here and I put a person sitting on the doorknob, and kind of like you're sitting there. You have the key to the door. It's up to you if you want to sit on the doorknob and keep the door closed, or if you want to use your key and go through and move forward. And then this is the last journal entry page. Again, I did this with the ladies that were out for their weekly session. And on this one, I gave them a package. Everybody got the exact same supplies, and we had to figure out how to put them together. So this one, I went with a theme called That Is Very Strange, because that was one of the book pages that was in there. And everybody had different book pages, but everybody had book pages. So I went with that theme. So I thought I would do a page that is weird or strange. So the content itself isn't very strange, but the ingredients that I used could be considered strange. So the paper that I used for this lady's hair is actually wasp nest paper. And wasps create the paper by chewing on the bark of trees, and then they add their saliva to it, and then it makes paper, and then they make their nest. And this nest is significant because my contractor found it in our horse shelter when he was building my art studio. And I discovered that you can paint watercolor paint over top, and you can add lines from different media. And so you don't need to add like dark shadows and highlights because they're naturally there. Some other things that were kind of strange that I've never used before are drywall tape. And that has its own stickiness or a glue on the back. And then you can also paint over top of it. So it has several layers on here. And I also found some, it's not strange, but it's new to me, so it is kind of strange. Some old receipts in my husband's grandmother's stash. And these are receipts from clothing stores in Medicine Hat. And so on here I added Mrs. Strange to the name, and the papers were from 1952, but I photocopied them instead of using the original pages. There are some old stamps from Canada and the United States. A sheet of paper, some old paper from AGT, and my husband's mother worked at AGT many years ago. And there's a store called the Berkeley Shop in Medicine Hat, which is very old, and I included that. And that it was so old that the phone numbers still were only 4 digits. And then on this one, this page, this little flap here, this is an old CD cover or case. And we added some burlap on the edges, a little stamp. I think that's Tim Holt's stamp. My family likes to play bingo, so I included that. Here's a little rat playing a cello, which is very strange. Inside is a little journaling card. And on here, I had the idea, I don't know where I got it from, but I had a paper bag and I put a stencil underneath, and then I took some sandpaper and went over top of it and created texture. And then I took ink pads and went across like this. And it's really kind of cool. And it makes, it feels like it's embossed without having to get an embossing machine. And the same thing is on the back. I put number and word stencils underneath. Here is a slip from Fortune Cookie. And again, when I did this page, it was just after Queen Elizabeth had passed away, so I thought I should include her in this. It seems strange that we'd be singing God Save the King instead of God Save the Queen, because that's all I've ever known since I was a little girl. And there's also telephone book pages in here. Yes, I have a telephone book from a very long time ago. And it happens to say 7-person school, and 7-person school sent the junior highs out here for 2 days. So I thought it was kind of a neat coincidence that was on there. Did a little bit of journaling. And then on the back, this is the tea cozy from Starbucks. And then there's a little tag from tea that I sewed on. And then I made this little journaling card, and there's a little film from Tim Holtz. I put a little castle to go back to the sort of the Halloween Queen Elizabeth theme. And then on the back, I did some journaling about some weird things that have been happening around here. And then we also included on here some sewing, because I put thread in the container. So the neat thing about this is you can put this in this way and it'll look like that, or you can turn it this way and it'll look like that. And then I added a little quote here from Anne of Green Gables, and that's it. So thank you very much for visiting my studio, and I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions at all about what I did or some materials that I used, please write a little note in the comment box. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and follow my channel so that you can see more. Thank you for joining me. Take care. Be happy, be healthy, be creative. Be creative, be happy, be healthy. Be creative, be healthy, be happy. There's so many great ways of saying that. Bye for now.